Hello everybody and welcome to Tiger Tells the Lost Stories, a place you'll find stories and fan fictions written and read to you by your host, me, Tiger. All of the stories on this channel are in the first person. So let's dive in with Dan and Larry. Dan and Larry is a unique storyline following the cliche genre of a person with a demonic arm. But I want to tell it in the format that the adult cartoons that we all know and love, like Family Guy and Rick and Morty, kind of use, using the same form of sense of humour and language. So let's dive in. Dan and Larry, Chapter 2, Delivery for an Extractor. I landed on the rooftop of one of the universities, or what was left of it. It was only a few stories high, and only the top floor survived the wild flood. I strolled across the roof, and two guys stood there guarding the door to the roof. I only access to the building from this level.
Oh, more people to throw about, and no people to get in my way.
Larry grunted. We are looking for that box, remember? I reminded Larry. The two guys spotted me and aimed their guns. I hopped down to the section of the roof and approached them. Go away, freak! One barked at me.
I hate that fucking word.
Larry growled. Gents, please, you know this don't end well. Someone stole a box from the doctor. I'm here to retrieve it. Just let me in, I said with a grin on my face. Never, the other one said, jabbing his rifle towards me.
Let me at them.
Larry growled. Well, don't say I didn't warn you guys, I muttered. Then I flung my demonic arm forward and it shifted into tendrils and grabbed one of the guards, lifted up the guy and slammed him into the ground. I then tossed him off the roof. He hit the water and we could hear his screams for help. Then his screams died down as something from the water took him. The other guy pulled the trigger and bullets flew at us. My arm shifted into a big circular shield and blocked the bullets. I then lunged forward and my arm reverted back to normal just in time as the sharp-pointed bone spike slivered from my wrist and I stabbed the man in the neck, blood oozing out of it. The man gargled blood as his body went limp. I attracted the pike and it extracted back into my arm. The man's body dropped to the floor.
What do people do cocaine for? Killing is such a fucking buzz.
Larry asked as if he was intoxicated. Dude, you need to get a shrink, I muttered.
Good one.
Larry chuckled. I then walked up to the door and kicked it open and started walking down to the only level that was accessible. I entered the hall and there several more guys sat there lounging around chilling with themselves. Can we not make this a bloodbath? I asked my demonic arm. I looked down at Larry and the sharp teeth in my palm bent into a smile.
Fine. I guess we could do the deep throat maneuver.
Larry chuckled. Can you stop calling it that? I said, disappointed. I then held out my hand and Larry expelled a deep fog from his mouth. It was a deep blood red. The fog filled the room and all the men started choking and coughing. Then one by one their eyes started bleeding and one by one they all dropped to the floor dead. Easy, I groaned. I walked down the hallway and stepped over the corpses. I walked into one of the classrooms that had been turned into a living quarters-like area, and there the guy from the hospital stood looking at the box which was placed on the table in front of him. I knew you'd find me eventually, the guy said. Yeah, you could have ran just a little faster, but I'd still have gotten you, I told him. He turned around, a pistol in his hand.
A big weapon, huh? Think you overcompensating for something?
Larry asked with a chuckle. So that's the demon, the guy huffed.
Name's Larry, dickhead.
Larry barked. I opened my arm out so the demon and the Madness Mafia gang member could see each other eye to eye. You are incredible. I cannot believe it. You are stood here. I saw how you took down my men. You are just a freak of nature. You're super powerful, aren't you? The guy muttered. You got a name? I asked. Charles Leicester, the man replied. All right, Charlie boy. I need that box, I told him, pointing at a small box behind him. I can't do that, Charles snapped.
Watch your tone, boy, or I will use your dick as a straw,
Larry threatened. All right, tough guy. I see. You can get the box, but I'll see that you have to do something for me first, Charles stated. We ain't hitmen, Charlie boy, I replied. No, you're a courier, and I need something delivered. Charlie told me.
Oh, I bet somebody's used sexy underwear.
Larry mocked. No, but it is important. Charles sighed. I looked at Larry. Well, I asked him.
Yeah, I'd do it. Why not? I get to kill people, you help your girlfriend. And did I mention we get to kill people?
Larry replied. That thing has a conscious mind, Charles stated with a small gasp. Yeah, he does, and I'd be careful because it's dangerous, I growled. Charlie laughed and then placed down his pistol. He then picked up the box. You can have this as soon as you take my parcel to this destination, Charles said. He then walked around the table, knelt down, pulled out a metallic ball no bigger than a tennis ball and threw it at me. I caught it with my human arm. What's this? I asked. Don't worry about it. Just get it to Mason & Co., Charles told me.
The homeless shelter?
Larry asked, confused. I looked at Charles with a confused look, as Charles' hard man demeanour had crumbled into a worried man who looked rather hopeless. Any name for this? I asked Charles. Samantha, blonde girl. Quite small, always wears a purple hoodie, Charles told me. I nodded and I walked away. I was rather confused. I had just killed several of his men, and then he offers me a good trade?
I don't like it. Something smells fishy about this.
Larry groaned. Dude, you don't have a nose, I chuckled. Then I ran out of the building. Larry shifted into his tendril form and pulled me across from roof to roof, and I landed on the Masons building. As it was one of the biggest skyscrapers in the city, it did take me a while to get to the top couple floors. The top couple floors had got turned into a place for the homeless, or argumentative, the people who were rejected and didn't want to cooperate. I jumped up to the roof and slung into one of the open windows and landed in one of the rooms. Larry rippled and formed back into its normal form and then camouflaged itself. Larry could camouflage to a human arm. I didn't want any of these people that nested here to see the demonic arm. I then walked around the place, dodging the people sleeping or sitting there burning daylight. I then found the girl in the purple hoodie, knelt down, and I handed her the silver sapphire. Samantha, I believe this is yours, I said. Oh my god, yes, thank you, Samantha grinned. She took the ball and tried to open it, but I noticed one of her hands was black with red veins. I can help, I offered. She handed me back the ball. I took it and opened it for her, and inside was a small vial of blue liquid. She took the vial and put out a small needle gun and slotted the vial inside. She then jabbed the needle gun into her messed up arm and pulled the trigger. She winced in pain as her arm shimmered back to normal as the blue liquid filled her body. She sighed with relief and then she looked at me. Sorry, I didn't mean to stare. I'm just confused, I muttered. I was one of the extractors. I kind of got bit, she told me. I'm sorry, what's an extractor? I asked. The guys in white, they come and pick a group of people to go dive in the water and extract eggs from those demon things, Samantha said, looking at me like I was stupid. Right, yeah, I muttered. She rolled her sleeve down. Luckily, Charles got me the antidote. They stopped giving them out for free, so I had to ask him. Samantha smiled. I nodded in response. Thanks. Charles said he was sending this with his most entrusted courier, Samantha smiled. I nodded and then I left her to it. I left the Mason Co. building and the information Samantha gave me was troubling me. I climbed onto the roof and Larry shifted back to his usual form. I didn't like that man. That looked really weird, I muttered.
I could sense some weird shit from it. It felt normal. Almost homely.
Larry told me. So you might think it's the same thing as you? I asked.
I say we give Charles a chat. See what we can find out.
Larry growled. Yeah, I want to find out more about these extractors and the eggs in the water, I replied. Then we jumped off the building and swung our way back to Charles. I stormed into the room. She told you, didn't she? Charles asked me as I walked up to him. Yeah, she did. What's going on, Charles, and why don't I know any of this? I barked at him. First off, here, Charles said, handing me the box. I took it and placed it in my bag. Now, if you're going to be serious about this, I'll show you what's going on. Take that back and tell them I'm sorry. She's always been good to my younger brothers and my cousins. Then when you're done, come meet me in the old car park. Top floor, of course. Tomorrow morning sounds good, if you're around, Charles told me. I nodded, then I walked away and left the building.
Are we really going to trust this dickhead? Really?
Larry barked at me. Just for this moment, yeah. Information is information. And right now, we have none, and I want to know more, I told him. Then I headed back to the hospital to give the box back to the doctor. Larry was voiced by Dakota. Now on with the outro.
This podcast is a production of the Three Ranger Bros Studios, in association with Zio to Hero, the podcast.
Thank you very much for listening to this chapter. If you want to hear more fanfictions and storylines, I have plenty of other Tiger Tales channels that you guys should be checking out. I'm going to give you a list of all of them. There's Tiger Tales, the channel that started it all. There's Tiger Tales The Lost Stories, a channel dedicated to storylines with the first person view. Tiger Tales Game Over, a channel dedicated to video game storylines. Tiger Tales X, official crossover fanfictions go on this channel. Tiger Tales Mysterious Origins, all my original storylines coming from myself go on that one. Then you have Tiger Tales One-Offs, a Tiger Tales channel dedicated to one-off storylines that have no continuation. We've also now expanded to podcasts, so make sure you check out everywhere you can listen to your podcast, the Fiction Fighters podcast, where you'll find a storyline called the Fiction Fighters, where fiction is power. I want to use this moment to thank all my supporters and the partners of Tiger Tales. First off, make sure you check out Cosplay Dude 637. I'm going to give you a quick rundown of all the places you can find him and where you can listen to his fanfictions. First off, there's Power Rangers Universe 19, a podcast dedicated to Power Rangers and Kamen Rider storylines. You'll also find a few of my stories on there too. Then, you also got Sailor Moon E, a Sailor Moon dedicated podcast storyline. Then you have The Order. Cosplay Dude 637's original storyline goes on this podcast. Then you have the One Piece audio drama YouTube channel, a audio drama dedicated to One Piece. Then you have Nostalgia Time, a YouTube channel dedicated to all fanfictions and storylines that are meant to make you feel nostalgic. You also have Marvel Universe 19, where you'll find Marvel related fanfictions. You can also find some of my storylines there too. Now, of course, me and Cosplay Dude 637 are part of a studio called the Three Ranger Bros Studios, so I'd like to mention the third member, Mark the Red Cornish Ranger, and his podcast, Nursery Comics, where he adapts comic books into audio dramas, and you can also find his original Power Ranger storylines there as well. A quick shout out to a few of my supporters. We have the If You Give a Dad a podcast host, Jared. Make sure you check out his podcast. He interviews some amazing guests. The Zero to Hero podcast, the Bulk and Scholar podcasting, Billy and Jim, of course, have been there since the get-go. So make sure you check out the Zero to Hero podcast. Some of my stories wouldn't be here without the Author's Crown YouTube channel's host, A Crown. So make sure you check out the Author's Crown YouTube channel with his fanfictions there. Now, if you'd like to hear me interview content creators about their content, or geek about specific topics with a bunch of geeks, make sure you check out the Tiger Nexus podcast. My podcast can be found everywhere you can find your podcast, and we have a great time. We usually upload on Mondays. Now, of course, make sure you check out the links down below. It'll lead you to some of my other channels. I game on YouTube, I do artwork on YouTube, and I like to talk about movies, TV shows, and comic books on YouTube. So make sure you go check out the other channels. A huge thank you to everyone watching. Hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and of course hit that notification bell so you don't miss another chapter. Roar of passion, everybody, and I shall see you guys in the next one.
That before we can...
Don't touch my Pringles.